Hello everyone! Welcome to another episode of Critical Critique. I'm pretty sure this is Taking the Stand. Um,
Yeah.
we are kind of doing I guess this is almost a part 2 to our last Taking the Stand where we had Nat. Sadly he couldn't be with us today, but this is going to be talking about the recent news, at least within the last few weeks, of Crunchyroll folding in Viz Media under its umbrella, as well as Funimation getting on production committees for anime. And how this is fucking horrific, and what we can do about it, I guess, which is something that I think Phil Venaris really wanted to talk about, so I guess I'll let you start.
Well, let me start. Yeah, I guess. I mean, this. I'll be dead honest. This has me infuriated and has me upset, and I'm not alone in blaming really anime fandom in this. I think
I agree.
there have been others who have done so. Let me scroll up for a second. Somebody popped into after this stuff started to break. Somebody popped into the Reddit thread for Kotaku in Action, and they said some pretty good stuff about this situation, in which you've got all these, we'll bitch and complain about it, but we won't do anything.
Yeah.
Right? And we'll sit back and let this happen, and it's just gonna go. That's how it's gonna go. And it's funny because the licensing industry for anime, because of streaming services, really seems to be untouched by the Heineken flu. Right? Is it okay? Is it
the
okay?
Heineken flu.
Is
yeah,
it okay?
Let's just call it that.
Yeah, is it okay to say that? Because if
Just
you call it
say
anything else,
Heineken. It's German in origin.
there you go. The German flu.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Heineken flu comes in, and it's devastating everything, but I don't think it's going to devastate the licensing industry and the streaming industry. Despite everything else being slammed by this, right? And you look across nerd culture, and what really, really kind of stung me in the realization that people for decades have been saying, oh, Japan's insulated from this, Japan's insulated from this, Japan's insulated from this. There's nothing to worry about. It's not going to go the way that all these other industries have gone. And it's like, no, I mean, these people, these political activists, these pundits, who have basically started infiltrating all these different industries, starting at beginning with around 2010, 2011, graduating college, getting into political activism. The college system anymore really just trains people to be political activists more than anything else. And so they've been going out and they've been joining these different companies and stuff like that, and they've been pushing their political activism into these multiple industries. And people have been saying, well, it's not going to happen to anime. It's not going to happen to anime. It's not going to happen to anime.
And, man, I'm just gonna tell you this, fool. I've been telling people for years when they've been saying, "Oh no, they're totally isolated for this." Like I'm not being like, "Oh, well, I predicted this. I'm smart." No, it's just I have my ear to the ground enough, and I kind of see where these things are going. The Japanese are just as profit driven as anybody else. They're looking to expand out into the wider world audience, and their view, you have to kind of viewing it from their situation. They're just like, okay, well, shit, so and so doesn't says that there might be a problem with like licensing this in a certain country or something, they're trusting these localization companies or these redistributors within the United States and other countries to like actually give them constructive advice and not, try to modify things solely on agenda alone. And it's one of those situations where I don't think the people who are higher up over there quite get the gravity or even really care that much about the cultural shift that's been happening in the West.
Well, 10 years ago, Hideaki Anno warned about this, right? He predicted the death of the anime industry. And what people don't understand about what he was saying, but I started to pick up on it, when you read between the lines, I think what Anno was saying, right, was that, because he said very clearly,
Context.
Yeah, animation.
Well, I'm just going to stop you right there. Context, what specific quote from Hideaki Anno? Because that actually sounds pretty interesting.
Oh, man, I wish I could dig it up. I should have had it on hand for this.
I vaguely recall... I might recall what you're talking about, because I've watched and read a few things.
He's spoken a lot about the anime industry, and I think I vaguely recall what you're saying. It would have had to have been around 2013, 2014, maybe?
Yeah, you're probably right. It wasn't 10 years ago. It was more like 5 or 6. And he did say something along those lines where like the anime industry is going to die, but what he meant by that, because he said animation will continue, right? It's not going anywhere, particularly in Japan.
Yeah, I recall. Not the exact quote,
but
I know the quote you're talking about. Yeah.
But he, by saying that, he says, animation will continue, but it won't be anime.
Yeah, it won't be the same. Yeah.
It won't be the same, and I think this is what he was, this might have been one of those things he was talking about, because anime has always had issues with production committees and stuff like that. Like, that's nothing new. That goes all the way back to the 70s, right? So that's nothing new. But now you've got this infiltration, right? I mean, it's hilarious because the people who are involved in these companies, right, in the communications industry especially, the media and communications industry, these people allegedly hate corporations and are heavily critical of capitalism, but they think that the corporations that they're in are good because they're run by them. I find that to be think And these
capitalism's
corporations
only bad when it's not allowing me to get rich.
I think the idea behind it, because you mentioned that a lot of these people, and I know the groups you're talking about. I actually have a friend who apparently went to school with Miles at
insert location.
Not going to mention a lot about that because
let's not do doxing on the show.
Yeah, should I even mention that? Cut out. I'm gonna cut out the name of the school, but yeah. So you have a lot of people that were in those types of universities that are definitely getting into various industries now, and I think the idea behind it, because it's smart when you think about it. A lot of people look at it on its face and view it as hypocritical. Hey, these people are against corporations. Why are they getting involved with them? Shouldn't they be fighting them? And it's a liquidating from or a change from within type of thing, right? If you can insert yourself into the infrastructure, as it were, in enough key positions, you can either change the output of the infrastructure or you could redirect it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's probably...
Did he drop out?
No.
He
stopped talking, and I was about to go. Yeah, I think that's very accurate to what I'm perceiving to be happening. Is you have a lot of these. You have a lot of these very anti-capitalist, socialist, communist types, right? To get a little bit political, right? And they'll go on and on and on and on about how corporation bad. I hate corporation. Blah 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 blah. But then you look into where do they work? Right, and you'll go, oh, they're a journalist, or they're a localizer, oh, they're on a committee or something on some thing high up, right? Like a pretty well-paying job, all things considered, in comparison to someone like me, right? Right. So I find very interesting how it's often those types of people who are the ones most vehemently, going on. But I think that's getting a little bit more into the political topic rather than the actual topic.
Well, that's the thing. This is all interconnected. That's the thing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
because
that's part of it. It's really hard to talk about what's currently happening without talking about the kind of political element to it, because you don't see, like, at this current juncture, you don't see a lot of right-wing type people engaging in this type of activism, right? You see, like, if we were, like, talking about, I don't know, Phil, you'll know more about this, right? Maybe pre-Bush era, like, round about that, like, at the time when the right was much stronger in its evangelical, religious type, soccer mum.
Absolutely,
like, back in those days, right? I would say that you would see the right partaking in this kind of behavior of, censorship and changing things, and this is too raunchy, we can't have this. This is.
Well, I lived through that.
Exactly, you did.
I lived through that. Like, I mean, most of I imagine most of our audience was born after 9/11 or like shortly before 9/11, right? And they don't have much of a memory of the 1990s. I was a teenager in the 90s. I was in middle school and high school, and in my early years of college in the 1990s. So, like, my formative years, my young adult years, were all during the 1990s. And now I remember very clearly getting involved in a lot of these quote-unquote nerd culture activities. And they ranged from being completely innocuous and innocent, like Dungeons and Dragons really is, to kind of, I guess, etchy. Not etchy. I'm sorry, edgy.
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Dungeons and Dragons is harmless. It's devil worship, clearly.
Well, that's exactly the point. I mean, these people were talking. I mean, my pastor told me directly to my face that he thought Dungeons and Dragons was satanic and devil worship, and I'm just like, dude, it's make believe with dice.
Yeah.
It literally is make-believe with dice.
Yeah,
playing make-believe with dice.
I feel like,
right?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, because I mean, I'm a '96 boy, right? So I was at like the tail, like I was becoming formative at like the tail end of this, right? So I don't have.
God, I was in my senior year.
I don't. So I don't
High
have the same kind of recollection of it as you do, but I do know of its existence, and I feel like the problem that a lot of these people have. Is they tend to forget that, it's not just the left that partakes in this kind of behavior. The right is just as guilty. But at this current juncture in time, the left is in power, essentially, right?
Well, yeah. There's somebody. Well, the funny thing nobody remembers about the 1990s too is the right wing was nowhere near as strong back then as people think it was. That was the 80s.
It was less that the right wing was, from what I know, that the right wing was strong in the 90s, and more that the left was kind of still fractured within the United States and trying to reestablish itself, as it were.
It looks like they've reestablished themselves as batshit insane.
Oh yeah,
well,
that was.
That's I don't want to get too off topic on this, but
it's kind of hard because there's a lot of context.
So the thumbnail for this video is going to be I don't want to get political, and then the fucking dude who's like 3 drinks later, by Allah, I am going to beat you with my shoe.
Yeah,
that's the thumbnail.
No, actually, like,
that's the thumbnail.
There's no way to avoid getting political about this, and that's the problem. Right, and here's the thing, like, and there's a reason I'm going to bring up a lot of other topics, right? Because anime is the next domino to fall, right? Yes, domino theory, blah 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 blah. People will say, "Oh, it's a slippery slope. Domino theory is a slippery slope." Well, motherfucker, Pol Pot did take over after Vietnam fell.
And
sorry, I mean, domino theory works, it occurs,
and enough. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, like, you have to look at it from
enough dominoes.
You have to look at it from the perspective of like objectively observable reality.
Yeah. When I watched the Quarterings video on that robogasm problem or issue, and I sat there and I thought, my God, you people are flipping out over something. Meanwhile, people are dying of the Heineken flu, and you're mad that an imaginary person that you were portraying, that wasn't you, mind you, it's not you, was, given a robogasm, right? And that whole fiasco with these people tweeting back and forth, I'm like, do you people not realize people are dying? Oh, they know people are dying every time Bush, or they want to talk about Trump.
Oh, yeah.
But, other than that, like, oh no, my personal space was invaded, like, on the internet, like, or some crap that.
I don't even know what you're talking about with robogasm. Like, I guess that's something,
I mean...
Oh, man, it's a big, it was a big to-do, and it was stupid. I mean, granted, yes, the guy who was playing GM...
You'll have to
fill you in.
You'll have to like link a video later.
Yeah, well,
right,
not. Okay.
But anyway,
So
it's an example. It's an example. It's an example, though, of one of the things that the Quartering said, though, in response to this, is that board games and role playing games are gone. They're lost to the SJWs.
Right.
And if you look, like that's another domino, and it's like I'm watching is all these things that I loved when I was a kid are being one. Yeah, I mean, Doctor Who is dead.
Doctor Who is dead.
Star Trek is dead. Star
Wars is dead.
Star Trek has been murdered.
Star Wars is dead. Comics is dead.
Right.
Games is dead.
Oh no! Comics is surviving.
Well, comics, as in when I
Marvel and DC won't survive.
When I mean comics, I should probably contextualize. I mean like the industry of comics, not like the current industry, not the industry that's now currently rising from the ashes of the olden. Right? There's a distinct difference there. But yeah, when I'm saying comics,
but like that's the thing is Comicsgate should be. Like, all these others should be a warning, but Comicsgate to us should be kind of like a sort of signpost. It's like, you can save this, but you've got to coordinate. You've got to start doing something about it. You've got to work together. Now, Comicsgate mostly was helmed by people who had enough disposable income to be entrepreneurial about it, right? And they have set up a rival industry to the quote-unquote mainstream comic books industry of DC, Marvel, IDW, and, Image, etc. Ethan Van Sciver was a big name in comic books before he was part of Comicsgate. He's got
a pretty good track record on his belt, from what I understand.
But and he's a very accomplished comic book artist and writer, but that still like is an example of you can still win, but you've got to do something about it, and you've got to find a way to organize it. If you can't organize, if you can't assemble capital, then if you can't coordinate, if you can't find a way to organize things, then the thing that you love is going to get destroyed. Yeah. Right? That's the thing. This is Raging Golden Eagle the other night had a video where he said, "This is our only chance. This is our only chance." And he's absolutely right, because, and I would actually rather put it as, this is the only chance we have left, because we have had 5 or 6 years, and at least 2 years. I mean, I've got a couple articles here pulled up, like one of them's in Japanese, on vipo.or.jp, interview list detail. I'll post a link to it for you guys. It's all in Japanese, right? So, like, if you can't read Japanese, you're kind of going to be a little bit on the outs. But this article is from this interview. It was an interview with all these different guys. Let's see. Scrolling to the top, we've got. Hold on. We got Kun Gao, the co-founder and general manager of Crunchyroll. Sean Klecker, president and CEO of Right Stuff. Philip Ward Schmidt, director of exhibitions, Anime Central. We've got all these guys at this like meeting of the minds, right? And talking. And this is a Stu Levy, the founder of Tokyo Pop. You know,
my
we've
God,
got
he
all
still
these guys.
exists? I thought
Well-
he disappeared after like the whole thing where he didn't pay his damn translators.
Well, this was from 2018. This is an interview in Japanese, in Japan, by this news agency, right? And I'm looking for the quote because I'm going to just try to like stumble through the Japanese. It's
Well, while you look for that, and also kind of to steer a bit on topic because we're kind of all over the place right now. But
yeah.
So we have this situation where a lot of people who may not necessarily gel well with what, for lack of better words, otaku culture within Japan and the United States, or may view it as something that is less than desirable and less than marketable from the outside, are now having a active involvement and are in an advisory role for production committees.
there's a
over
phrase
them.
for that.
Yeah,
Do you know what the phrase for that is? It's called a fifth column.
Yeah.
It's called a fifth column. Right? That's
you
what
get-
these people are. They're fifth columnists.
Yeah, and and they're relying on them for the advisory roles because that is something you're interested in as a company. How can I market this to outside audience? And they're going to have an increasing say in what does and does not get greenlit. I mean, Funimation said that themselves. It's weird the timing of that article. Like they had their nose to the or like their ear to the ground on this, right? Because a lot of people have been questioning their contributions.
Well,
To the
I
anime
would
industry.
still question their contributions even after this announcement.
Well, I mean, people in Japan have been questioning this for
Because I
decades. I
think
mean, you had one or two Japanese whistleblowers
Yeah.
on Crunchyroll not giving money to the studios.
Yeah, I think we
Not being good on their
we
promise.
talked about this a little bit in the last one, right?
Yeah, we
about
did.
Crunchyroll and because I guess to bring it back to the actual news, right? The actual news on the Funimation end is that Funimation is now going to be on the production committees for anime. Now, in terms of how this is actually going to affect, I don't think we're going to see a noticeable effect right away. Because if you look at Crunchyroll is actually, like, the test case of this already happening. Because Crunchyroll already has been on the production committees of anime for several years now, right? And their name gets in the credits and all of that. The thing that a lot of these defenders of these companies don't actually seem to understand is that my issue with this is, okay, so, yes, they are on these committees. How much are they actually paying to get on these committees? And is it an actual amount that is going to the creators that I actually care about? Or because are they paying the animators or are they paying the production committee? Because that's two completely different things, right?
Well, there's three types of people that I would see that are that are involved in this, right? From the audience standpoint, that would not oppose Crunchyroll in this, or they would not criticize Crunchyroll. The first one, and I imagine it's a very large proportion of the population. These are people who watch the Anime Man and Akideras, right? These are
The
people
normies,
who.
basically.
Well, okay. They're the people who are the dabblers. They're the toe in the water. They really like what they see, but this isn't like they don't have a deep investment in it, and so they're uninformed.
They are the
right?
people
They're
that
uninformed.
probably watch like one or two shows a season, and
Yeah.
like,
They probably watch what's most popular, whatever
yeah,
the Anime Man says
they
is
have
good.
they have their like extremely the people that only watch stuff like Attack on Titan, My Hero Academia. Like back
Yeah.
in the day, we would describe those types of people as the people that only watch the big three, so Naruto, One Piece, and,
Absolutely, yeah.
Bleach at the time, right? The shonen kind of, the people that only watch those shows and don't kind of branch into other genres or have a wider
Yeah.
net.
And they're probably the most numerous of all the groups, right?
Yeah, they are the most. I would say that they are probably the vast majority of people. Like, it's hard to say anime fans, right? Because at that point, it's like, no, you're a My Hero Academia fan. Like, there's a distinction.
Well, let's
I
also-
think there's a distinction to be made in the sand between someone who is like an anime fan, like a fan of the entire medium, and someone who just specifically likes certain shows, right? Like, I feel
Yeah.
like that's like, and a lot of people will get uppity about that. Be like, oh no, you can't gatekeep and say that they're not anime fans because it's like, well, here's the thing, right? If you're not invested in the medium as the medium itself, right? Because I'm invested in the medium because I love, like, the unironically love the diversity in it, and that it has all of these different shows that are like, I might not enjoy all of them.
It doesn't pander to me. I like it because it doesn't pander to me.
Exactly. Like, there's all these different shows. Like, we went through the seasonal overview, like, last video, right? Like, there were tons of shows in there that, you know, we didn't particularly have much interest in or care about, but it's like the fact that those shows are allowed to exist for the people that do is great, and I love that.
I was astral projecting into the last stream. You may not hear me, but I was asleep at time and I was spiritually there.
You were spirit walking into the seasonal overview.
I am one with the ghost of the
but yeah,
machine.
I think that there's definitely a distinction to be made, right? And there's nothing wrong, like, in my view, inherently with just saying, oh, I'm a My Hero Academia fan, right? Like, that's just what I like.
Yeah.
I just like My Hero Academia. I'm not particularly interested in the medium as a whole. I just like the show. It's like, oh, it would be the difference between saying, okay, so I'm a Game of Thrones fan, but I wouldn't say that I'm like a Western drama fan or something, right? Like, it's.
I'll make something of a better, kind of like a better comparison. Because I usually like to compare countercultures to one of the countercultures I'm very interested in, but never was really a member of, which is the punk movement, right? So it's like, you can have somebody who likes the Sex Pistols, right? And it's like, oh, I like the Sex Pistols and I like the Clash, and it's like, yeah, everybody does. Yeah. You know, tell me about, like, the Dead Kennedys, or tell me about Black Flag. There you go. Tell me about Black Flag.
I like Metallica, and I like the Foo Fighters. I'm very, that kind of thing,
People will get mad about that. I mean, but back in the just go watch SLC Punk. Back in the 1980s, like, these guys hazed. It's like, if you showed up, like, you know, listening to, like, the Sex Pistols, it's like, okay, that's great. Don't say you're punk. You know, it's like, it's more than just the music too. It's just the movement. It's more than just this. You know, it's an entire movement in and of itself.
It was a statement.
And what you are is an orbiter.
Yes.
Right, you're kind of like you're kind of like on the outside, you know. You're one of the you're far out. You're not even like a planet. You're like in somewhere out there in the Kuiper Belt or the Oort cloud or whatever. Yeah. Right, you're not one of the inner planets. Right, you're floating out there somewhere in interstellar space. You know, so that's fine. Right, there's nothing wrong with that, but don't put the badge on your jacket and say you're something you're not.
You see this?
Because that's where people start to get mad.
You see this a lot with the anime fandom, where you'll have those.
An easy point of comparison, I think, would be, there is a difference between somebody who watches summer blockbusters and a movie buff.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I think
absolutely, that's another good comparison.
I think we see this a lot within the anime fandom, where you will have these people acting like they have authority when they don't. Specifically, I think the My Hero Academia fan base in recent years is the perfect example of this, where every single fucking time something in that show happens that is somewhat fucking problematic, they will just lose their collective shits over it. Completely fucking lose their minds and be like, oh, this is horrible fucking whatever. And it's like,
then why are you... My question to them then would be, why are you watching this instead of She-Ra?
Yeah.
Or whatever other, show that was designed to pander to your taste.
That's an interesting
Why
point.
are you watching this instead of that?
That's an interesting point.
Because you don't like this.
That's an interesting point, actually, that you bring that up, because I've actually noticed that a lot of these people are actually cartoon fans. They're actually fans of Western cartoons, like She-Ra and Steven Universe, and like the more modern, like Adventure Time era type stuff, right? That's kind of spawned from that, right?
Well, that's the funny thing is, I don't even consider those people to even be orbiters. They are people who are Western cartoon fans who just like, and they're not even. I don't even consider them in the metrics. Most of these people are, fringe left psychopaths in the first place.
They're Western cartoon fans that just so happen to watch they just so happen to watch My Hero Academia, right? Like, or
exactly.
What was it, Kenshin no Yuba, Demon Slayer, or whatever, right? Like, they'll watch like that one very popular show, probably because all of their friends are talking about it, and because a lot of their Western cartoons are inspired by anime now, right? Like, you had, bloody, that one episode of Steven Universe that had, like, some anime directors in it, and ironically enough, it was the one episode that had the best animation in it.
Wow.
Which is quite funny. Back when I used to watch Steven Universe as, like, a fucking funny thing to watch. But it's... Yeah, you have these people, but the problem is that they come in and they, instead of actually appreciating the medium for what it is and the quirks that it has, they want to change it to match the other things that they like, right? So they like like Western cartoons. They go, okay, why can't anime be like my sanitized Western cartoons? Why does anime have all these boobies and the sex and the violence and all this other shit that I don't like, right? We have to change this to be more like this thing that I do like, and I don't consider those people to be at all fans, and I think they should be gatekeeped to fucking hell and back, because gatekeeping is good and we need to partake in it a lot more. Because those people, because you cannot call yourself a fan of something if you're, like, if you go into it and demand shit to be changed, right? I made a tweet about this in response to someone. I think it was talking about, like, Lolly or something, because someone was saying, oh, Lolly's difficult to, Lolly is
Yeah,
stop.
I am very difficult.
Yeah, Lolly is very difficult. No, lollies are like stopping new people from coming in because it's like problematic or some shit. And I made the point of I made the point of, well, then just don't fucking show them lolly shows then. Just don't fucking watch lolly shows. And not only that, don't demand, like, don't, if you are saying this, because this person was saying this supposedly from the perspective of an anime fan who wants more people to join in or whatever, which is we can get into that because I think me and Phil have something to say about that based on a recent interaction in another server. But like the idea of bringing in more people, right? Oh, we have to sanitize this for more people. If you're thinking like that, you're not a fan, because a fan accepts the flaws within the thing that they like, right? I think the
sometimes they don't even become flaws; they become features.
Yeah, like
they become they become like cultural identifiers.
Yeah, exactly. And
right. So it's just like, you know, if you know this thing, if you know about this thing, if you are, even regardless of what your opinion on it is, if you know this thing, in some cases, then that thing could be kind of like a signifier that you are one of the tribe, right? That's I mean, that's how countercultures, subcultures, and cultures in general work.
I think a good example, and
unrelated,
because I talked.
But full. Have you ever seen? Well, it's fine. I had to get up to get something. But full. Have you ever seen a video by Corey Gaming? He does a lot of videos in regards to like fighting games, stuff like that. And he did a really good video on fighting game scenes and subcultures and their communities, and specifically how somebody can maintain an internal community while still attracting outsiders. And he quoted a book by I can't remember, maybe Wells, somebody, who was talking about these in regards to just not in regards to fighting games, but in regards to, like, you know, other organizations where you'll typically have an inner circle and an outer circle type of thing, with the idea that outer circles are people testing the waters, and if it's not for them, they can, you know, go do something else.
That's a good way to put it. Yes. Now, and so that's the thing, is like kind of going all the way back to like the point I was trying to make at the beginning, that there's three types of people. You've got this outer circle, right? And there's going to be layers of the outer circle. You've got and a lot of the outer circle is going to be these people who pretty much only like, you know, the most popular shows or whatever their favorite, like, high profile anime YouTubers, you know, recommends and stuff like that, right? So you've got this huge crowd of people that are only watching like 2%, 3% maybe of the shows coming out per year. But it's always like the highest rated shows, right? So those people, you know, they're like on the outskirts. They're testing the waters, or a lot of them, I'll be dead honest, they're just tourists.
Yep.
In 10 years, in 20 years, they're going to move on. I know so many people from back when I was in college that watched anime, and then now they don't.
Yeah.
You know, they just, it was not a lifelong hobby. It was not a lifelong interest, and they just moved on with their lives. They do now, like, I hate to say it, they do boomer shit. Partly because a lot of them have families and stuff. But, you know, you think it's not going to happen to you. Ha, 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 joke's on you. You will become a boomer someday.
Yeah.
You know, you too will be, you know,
I already kind of feel
you
it.
too will be old. But, you know, like, for those of us like myself, right, you know, maintaining this interest over the decades, watching as it changed, watching as it evolved, you know, so a lot of us have kind of like, no, a lot of the old school otaku. I'll get into that in another moment, because they're actually the ones I have the biggest beef with in a lot of ways. But you know, you've got that first leg, the first group. That's these orbiters, right? And you know, they're here today. They're gone tomorrow. But there's a lot of them, and they appear to inflate the numbers. Then you've got another two types. You've got the infiltrator, who is, whether or not they actually do like anime is really up for grabs. I imagine many of the infiltrators do honestly like certain anime. But they're infiltrators and they're pushing their agenda. Their agenda comes first.
Yeah.
And they want to remake the anime fandom, and they want to remake anime itself in the image that they want.
Yeah, I really like anime, but I wish it wasn't so sexual. You know, those types of people. It's like anime feminist. The website as a whole is a very good example of this, in my opinion, because
I've never seen it or heard of it.
Well,
yeah.
anime.
Oh, you're gonna like this one, Full. So, you know how you already don't like Crunchyroll being on production communities. As I recall, there are some people from anime feminists that work for doing articles.
So
I am not surprised.
Okay, so this is actually an interesting. It's very sidetracky, but it's very interesting because there was I can't remember who he was, but I believe it was either Leo or someone else on Twitter who got into an argument with Miles over this, right? Because what they had pointed out was a bunch of people that write for Crunchyroll's like news section, right, and like make articles for that, also just conveniently so happen to work at the Anime Feminist and do a bunch of work for them as well, right? So this guy on Twitter kind of pointed this out and said, hey, isn't this a little bit kind of sketch, because you've got these people that are like doing this like political shit on one end and then also working like very closely to like, you know, the major anime distributor in the West, right? Like, and Miles, being the amazing PR man that he is, made this into a massive deal because he was trying to defend it and go, oh no, there's no collusion going on. Oh no, there's no crossover going on. No, they don't do any of this shit. And Leo was just like, no, look at all these examples of these writers putting their like political opinions into their article pieces on Crunchyroll, as well as like all these examples on the Anime Feminist of the dudes. I was like, oh no, there's nothing to see here, guys. Nothing.
So he's basically gaslighting the whole time, and Leo's
he was basically I don't know if it was Leo or not, but it was someone, right? I think Leo made a thread about it, and that's what I read, right? But it was like, yeah, like he was just gaslighting the whole thing and just being like, no, there's nothing to see here. No.
It's amazing how many of these people are good at gaslighting, considering that's a tactic used by sexual predators.
It's also a tactic that they attributed to their political opponents 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I find that funny, you know, projection, man,
it's
psychological
very
projection.
But there's the connection between Crunchyroll and the Anime Feminist is like very, very close. They're very close.
Yeah. So I mean, the infestation. It's not just an infiltration. It's an infestation. I mean, it is a fifth column.
Yeah. It's
right. And you know, the betrayers from within, the saboteurs, right? That's exactly what they are, and they have no loyalty to the subculture. They have no loyalty to the counterculture. Half the reason they managed to muscle their way in is actually because these nerd subcultures have been some of the most tolerant.
Yeah.
Despite what they accuse them of being, nerd culture has been, because during the 80s and 90s, man, nerds were pretty much socially ostracized, and so nerd culture has been for decades one of the most tolerant places you could go. And now they have taken advantage of that extreme tolerance
Yeah.
to try to
Infiltrate.
reshape all of these countercultures and subcultures within the umbrella of nerd culture
Yeah.
in the West, and reshape it into a part of their political movement. And they've been basically, and it is no surprise. It is no surprise that the majority members of these various counterculture movements within the umbrella of nerd culture, it is no surprise that the majority were white males. It's no surprise. I mean, that doesn't mean like there weren't females. There weren't. I mean, when I was in college, yes, the nerd group, that the nerd club that I was part of was predominantly white. We also had a lot of female members. We also had a couple black members. We had one or two gay members. Actually, we almost won an award for being the most diverse group on campus, and we didn't even know we were in the running. It didn't even cross our minds. We thought we were all the same, right? That's the funny thing. This sort of thing united us. And then these people, they came in, and they're taking over something that they didn't build. That's another thing. They didn't build, right? And they're converting it and perverting it for their own political means, and they're ostracizing and alienating the people who didn't want that change to take place. And they ostracize and alienate them by being intolerant. They call them names. They accuse them of being horrible people on a political spectrum, bad guys in World War II, and they compare them to all these other historical entities that actually it is an insult to the people who actually suffered from those historical entities. Let's be completely honest about that. And let's be honest, they're also pathological narcissists, right? This is this generation the millennial generation has probably a larger percentage of pathological narcissists in its number than any previous generation, and they've taken over all these industries, and that's the second type, right? That's the one that's the most obvious threat.
Yeah. And
That's the most
thing
obvious.
with them is I think that they're definitely the most insidious because they tend to lurk within the other two types, I believe. Because I have a sneaky suspicion I know the type that you're going to say next.
The wolf in sheep's
Yeah.
The third one is the lazy. The third one is the lazy
The
fuck.
apathetic. Yeah.
And if you've been paying attention to the one server you and I are mutually in, and Loli has crossed swords with this blowjob too. This guy is a complete jackass. Now, granted, he's also a Gen Zer. He's not a millennial. He's a Gen Zer, right? And basically, these guys are a threat simply because they most of them advocate this sort of status quo, right? I like it. Because I'm a lazy fuck. I don't want to have to get up and work for my anime.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to do what you did, Fulminatus, to get your fix on anime, right? I don't want to have to go out and blow $30 on a dubbed VH, and this is $30 back in 1997.
What do you mean I have to use a torrent program?
Yeah, what do you mean I have to work for my anime?
What do you mean I have to wait a week?
Yeah, what do you mean I have to wait away? Motherfucker, I waited years for some of these shows. What are you talking about?
They're the people that have been conditioned.
Oh my god! You know what I get? You know what I get from people like that too is like when I tell them like you're a pussy. You can't wait. Like I had to wait a week, or I had to wait years for some of my anime, and they're like, okay, boomer, and it's like, oh, one, I'm not a boomer. Two, fuck you.
I feel like the way I would describe
for reference. I just want to put this out there. That still kind of exists in some more retro anime communities.
Yeah.
For example, SPT Lasner, one of my favorite mecha anime, only up to episode 26 when I first started watching it was translated, and it took years for the rest of it to come out.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, some of these old stuff I still do not believe Super Dimension Fortress Macross Do You Remember Love has been officially licensed ever.
No, it hasn't.
I mean, there was the Clash of the Bionoids Carl Masick butchery from like the late 80s, early 90s. That was a hunk of shit. Let's not even talk about that. But like, and that's the thing though. That's what I remember that age. I remember Carl Masick. I remember he did more to bring anime over to the West than anybody before him. But at the same time, he butchered this stuff. It was massacred. They take Carl Massacre was one of his nicknames, because the shit that he brought over, he completely butchered. He changed names, he changed plot lines. He created Robotech.
Yeah.
How did he do it? He took 3 completely unrelated shows, chopped them up, changed the names, changed the story, changed the plot, slammed it together, and what actually survived through was so good nonetheless. And it wasn't because of him. It was because, what he brought over was already good to begin with.
Yeah.
It developed a cult following. And as soon as I could get my hands on like fan subbed copies of the original SDF Macross, I was like, there's no reason to ever watch Robotech again.
Yeah.
This shit is the best. But that's the thing is, I've lived through this already. I've lived through this censorship. I've lived through this licensing hell. I don't want to see it happen again. And politically, right? Carl Masick simply believed that this shit wouldn't sell in the West because it was too violent or too sexual for television.
That goes back to the localizer cast, where it's like, why do we?
They actually had an excuse back then, because what was not allowed on TV in the 70s and 80s and shit.
Okay, true.
They actually had an excuse.
That's true, but
they don't have an excuse now.
That's true, but my point is more along the lines of, right, so why do we need localization, right? That was something we kind of talked about in the last cast a little bit, but I feel could be extrapolated a little bit now, right? It's like, what is localization? Well, localization, in my opinion, and the definition that we should start using, is changing something to better fit the market. Right, it's market-based. It is making changes in order to, appeal to a certain demographic. Funnily enough, Digibro actually had a really interesting little video about this, because he's been doing his rants again, right? And someone asked him to talk about, the political inserting bullshit into localizations and dubs and shit. And he made the very good point of, why are these people appealing to such a small demographic by adding shit like Gamergate? Who the fuck, like in Prison Schools dub, right? Who the fuck is going to know what Gamergate was? People that were on Twitter at that time and were involved in that for like the 1 year that it was actually relevant, and then had to deal with the idiots talking about it for 5 years afterwards, right?
This serves 2 purposes. One, it assuages the egos of these pathological narcissists. That's one. And 2, right? Because they've gaslit so much over Gamergate, right? And they moved the goalposts, and they redefined what Gamergate was so many times. Go look up the Wikipedia entry on Gamergate. In fact, I will do it right now and read it out.
Well, hang on, because that's getting a bit off top. That's getting a bit off the point that I was trying to make, right?
No, the thing is, they're going to. We have to be ready for them to do this to us.
Because the point.
That's part of what I mean.
All right, I get you, but like the point I was trying to make was more along the lines of, right, so they're making these changes to appeal to who, right? Because who actually at the time would give a fuck about Gamergate being added to a dub? Like, in the Dragon Maid case, the patriarchy line, right? Who actually fucking would know anything about patriarchy theory and all of that bullshit? And the answer is pretty fucking obvious. It's people that are within their little in-group. So instead of actually making, like, when you're talking about the whole Macross Robotech stuff, right? They are making those changes to appeal to what they believe. Well, one, they're making it because of the TV restrictions and whatever, but that's a different issue, right? They're making it because they want to try and get it to sell, right? To everyone. To broad, wide, grasping, audiences.
It's also an indoctrination campaign.
Yeah,
is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
Is they don't just want it to sell to a broader audience. they're trying to indoctrinate a broader audience. That's
Yeah.
why they've been doing in the movie theaters, in the movies, what they've been doing.
So
That's why they've been.
So
you know,
they're using.
That's
so,
why these narratives are
and
being
that- and
pushed
that's-
on
And
society.
that's why I think we need to change how we use the word localization to be very specific in that localization is about making these changes for the market, because these infiltrators, right, are using that as a shield and saying, oh no, you need localization, because if you didn't have localization, then everything would be Google Translate, right? And they're using that to give themselves that little like foot in the door, right, to be able to justify these changes, right? And you see this with like Takahashi, right, on Twitter, where he talks about this,
Yes.
and he downplays everything, right? He downplays the whole, oh no, these changes are not that big of a deal, you know, like it's not, you know, oh sure, like the one tweet that's true.
These changes are a form of expression for the translators.
And oh my god, I brought this up I brought this up in the piracy video.
Yeah.
Where the job of a translator is not to express any kind of personal flair. Your job is to, you know, translate as best as you can so that the reader or the audience does not realize they're dealing with a translation.
Yeah, you're meant to be
You want that
You're meant
smoothness.
to be translating the author's
Trans-
intent, not your own intent.
It's transparency. You want a lot of transparency, right? And this is they're moving the goalpost. They're playing mind games, right? They're playing mind games. That's that's all this is mind games, and that's the problem. So, you know, you got these. So going back, like I said, you got the three types we're dealing with, right? The most populous one, which is the orbiters, right? They're here today, go on the Mars. You got the people that are the infiltrators, and then you got the third type that are just the lazy bums. And it's the lazy bums. I mean, the infiltrators are the most dangerous, but the lazy bums are almost as dangerous.
But apathy is death, essentially.
Exactly. And like that guy, Loli and I were arguing with on the one server. You know, that guy, he likes the status quo. He wants more people to get into anime. Why? Because he doesn't want to get bullied in schools. What? He doesn't want to get bullied in school. Oh, boo-hoo.
Yeah.
Cry me a river.
Who
That's,
gives a
you know,
fuck? Who gives a fuck?
By the time I was a sophomore or junior in high school, right? I carried my nerd status as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Right? And oh, by the way, I learned how to fight.
Yeah. Well,
Right? I didn't, I got in a handful of
hate
fights.
this-
You know,
what-
people started leaving me alone.
The fucking the bloody manlet that is what, right, made this was going on about something similar to this, where it's like, oh, how does this what AnyTube, how does this make AnyTube look, you know, like, oh, we have to think about what the outside,
I don't
we
care.
have to think about what the outsiders think. Oh, we have to think
Did the punk movement
Punk movement give a
care
shit?
about what
No.
the outsiders?
no
No,
Because
exactly.
the whole
Why
point,
should we give a shit?
because that wasn't that like the whole point of the punk movement was to not give a fuck about what the outsiders
Exactly.
think? Anime needs
Exactly.
to do the same. I don't give a fuck if someone thinks that I'm a creepy fucking pervert. Why the fuck am I called Naretsu the perv, guys? It's a word that has negative. It's a word that has negative connotations, and I've always understood that it has negative connotations. But I wear it because back when I was, you know, a young anime fan, ecchi was my thing. I like ecchi shows. I like that kind of trashy fucking, you know, big boobies, fucking jiggling everywhere, fucking sexually suggestive shit. I was into that shit as a fucking horny teenager, right? Like, that was my jam. I love that shit. So when I was on a really old, like, cast back in the day, I used to be on a cast with some other people. There was this one time I was just talking, when we were talking about anime we were watching, I was just talking about, like, High School of the Dead and High School DxD and all these other, like, ecchi shows, right? One of the cast members was like, fuck, you're such a perv. And I was just like, you know what? I am. Fuck it. That's going to my name now. So that's like the origin of, like, the perv moniker, right? Like, I wear that as, like, a fucking, maybe not as a prideful thing, but as, like, yeah, it's an apt description of what I like. I like fucking sexually suggestive shit in media.
It's a badge of honor.
Yeah, I like it.
I like that.
It's
we're
a badge
getting
of
our own
honor.
Cinematic universe.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. This is some Naretsu the perv
Similar
deep
thing.
lore going on right now. But,
Similar thing, but like I used this name on Discord largely as a shitpost originally because it was back in 2015. I'm like, we're gonna be back to Skype in a week. That didn't happen, unfortunately. I'm not a very smart man.
Curb your enthusiasm
but,
mildly plays in the background.
Yeah, and at this point, it's just like I can immediately tell whether or not I'm gonna fit into a community just by like joining with this name. If they freak out and ask me to change it, I know I don't belong there.
Yeah, no, completely. And that's the thing, is it's like, you know, it's extremely frustrating in that, you know, have we come so far that we're so fragile?
Yeah.
Right? That we need everybody to approve of, and that is really, I know I bash millennials a lot, right? Don't worry, I bash boomers a hell of a lot too. I'm not a huge fan of boomers.
I'm a millennial and I bash millennials.
Yeah, well, my brother's a millennial, so you know, and trust me, he's a millennial. But but that's the thing, is I noticed, like, you know, as my brother was growing up through school and everything like that, right? And I'm watching it, and like we never fell for this. I guess Gen X was just too fucking cynical. I mean, the voice of our generation blew his fucking brains out with a shotgun, right, in 1994. Like we were far more cynical and nihilistic. So when they gave us they gave us the same shit. Like they told us, like, oh, you guys are special snowflakes, and you shouldn't worry about who wins at the game, just as long as everybody has fun. And we're like, yeah, no. And then like, and but the other thing, but that shit worked on the millennials. And not only that, I guess maybe because they upped their game, but not only that, like, what also happened was, right, Ritalin. You guys got force-fed Ritalin.
Yeah.
And so now everybody is so like sensitive, and everybody is so like fragile, right? And it's like, why are you so damn fragile? Like, motherfucker, have you ever been punched? Like, really? I've been punched so many times as a kid.
I have a theory that it's to do with the prevalence of daycare. I think it's to do with daycare, because I've noticed that when I was at creative studies, I used to talk with this one chick who had a kid, right? And she funny enough, she was around my age as well. She was quite young, and having a kid at that young, right? And so she was at creative studies doing full-time creative studies. The dad was at work. Where was the kid? Well, the kid was at daycare. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. But then I looked more into it, and it turns out that this is actually a really big thing around people my age, right? They've started, like, because we've become very career-focused, right? Everyone has their career. Both parents are now working to financially support the family, right? Who's looking after the kid? Daycares are looking after the kid.
That's the funny thing, because Gen X, we were latchkey kids. There wasn't a lot of daycare for us.
Yeah, no.
So
you were left on your own if both parents were out.
Yeah, I learned how to cook like around age 10.
Yeah.
Right, because it was that or eat breakfast cereal for dinner.
It was that or eat. It was that or eat nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's just like where it made us a little bit more self-reliant and more independent.
Yeah, and I feel
right, and then at the same time,
like when we talk about like the snowflake type, everyone thought like they're so fragile. I actually think that daycare has a lot to do with this, because they don't like learn the type of things that a parent can teach them, right?
You may be onto something.
Yeah,
you may be onto something.
Because I've heard this before, right? I don't know if this daycare argument is mine specifically, but because I think I heard it from someone else. But I feel like daycares are instilling this sort of like at a very young age, right? Because it's essentially like indoctrination in a sense, where you have all of these kids being taught by whoever's running the daycare, and whoever's running the daycare is probably doing the same stuff you were talking about with everyone has to get a trophy, everyone wins, everyone's special, everyone's all of that stuff.
It was the parenting theory back.
Yeah, all of that stuff, right? And I have a sneaking suspicion that that is what has instilled this sort of fragile kind of beta snowflake type stuff. And as they've gone older, and as they've grown up, and they've continued to have that instilled into them throughout the educational process, right? And the parents have not been there to course correct, right? And to kick them in the ass and go, no, hang on a minute, you need to actually, like, understand how to handle responsibilities and how to not, falter under pressure and whatnot. I feel like that is something to do with why we're seeing this, right? And it's sad in a way, because when you actually think about it, it's not their fault that the system has failed them, right? It's not their. I would say it is kind of the parents' fault, because the parents have decided to nope out of the fucking picture, right? So there's a little bit of blame to be had there. But I feel like in terms of the system itself failing kids, I think that's a problem, and it's why I was actually very there was a news. This is getting really off topic, but it's good to.
Yeah, we're getting off topic.
We're turning this from a fucking taking the stand to a fucking background.
And this is anime sociology.
Anime sociology.
Yeah, I know.
But there was this one school in New Zealand there was a news story about it when I used to watch the 6 o'clock news as a kid, and they had the philosophy of we're just gonna let the kids fucking do whatever. You want to climb a fucking tree and fall and fucking scrape your knee? Do it. Fucking, there you go, you've learned the boundary, right? Because at normal school, at least the school I was at, they had all these rules. Oh, you're not allowed to fucking harm you can't jump, don't do the dangerous shit. And it's like, that's part of being a kid, is doing the dangerous shit and learning that the stovetop hurts, right? In a sense, right? Like, you learn, how do you learn that fire is hot? Well, you burn yourself. That's how I learned that fire was hot. It was when I was really, really young. Dad was doing a campfire. I got a little bit too close to the fire and I somewhat burnt one of my fingers. And I went, okay, fire is hot. I've learnt the lesson, right? And I don't think that kids are getting these lessons instilled into them because, they're just getting nanny stated. They're just getting, throughout the entire process, from start to finish, as soon as they enter the system, they are getting coddled and nanny stated and not being allowed to, do shit that is somewhat dangerous. It's like, kids use...
To bring this...
All right, but yeah,
to bring this back to anime, right? Is the other problem that I notice is this the whole McDonald's, Burger King style approach, and this goes into the laziness aspect, right? The all the anime you want is at the tip of your fingers for just if you get a Crunchyroll subscription for, I don't know, what is it, $15 a month or something?
Fucking no, I don't. Fucking.
Yeah, and it's I got, it's funny, I got a High Dive, which is what, $6 a month, and even now, I don't know who owns High Dive. I better look it up.
Yeah. Because
depending on that, I'm seriously thinking about canceling it because I don't want to be supporting bad actors, but that's the thing is these guys are I like getting as much anime as I want. It's like a huge buffet of anime for a nominal fee every month.
Yeah,
and I don't want to have to put any effort in, and I don't want to have to work, so I'm willing to accept whatever they're going to give me. If it's a dub...
Yeah, I think I was trying to make this point before, but we were going a bit scattershot, is that I feel like people have been indoctrinated... Well, not indoctrinated, conditioned. Conditioned is the right word. I feel like we have been conditioned to think that this is the way to do it. And funnily enough, the thing that actually proves this is Netflix. Because do you remember when Netflix first started releasing anime? And the way that they released...
No.
Well, listen to this, right? The way that they started releasing anime was they don't do it weekly. They do it as, the season's finished. They release the whole thing as a batch, right? The whole season comes out at once, right? You don't get it weekly. A lot of people, including myself at the time, and I've now realized that I was retarded, right? We're like, what? Why wouldn't I want to watch it weekly? Blah, 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 blah. And then I realized that, wait a minute. Why?
I remember this controversy.
Yeah, why is there a problem with this? Why is it a problem?
Exactly, that's what my point was.
Yeah, why is it a problem that I can't watch it weekly? And at the start I did, and I think it's because I was conditioned, right? I was conditioned into the way that you watch anime is you watch it weekly with everyone else, in a sense, right? With the community. You watch the shows that are coming out as they're coming out, and you do it as a daily part of your routine, right? You sit down and you watch that show that day, right? Or whatever. And then I realized, wait, I don't actually have to do that. I could just watch shows at my own pace and just I just download the show or whatever, and then I can wait till a day when I'm able to watch it and not have to worry about it, right? I think that the community has been conditioned by like the convenience of Crunchyroll and these services to think that it's necessary to watch things weekly, because if you don't watch it weekly the day it comes out, you're not part of the conversation. You're not.
YouTube is a part of that too.
You're not part of the you're not part of the conversation. You get spoiled. You get spoiled because everyone else is talking about what happened in Kenshin no Yuba that day, right, or whatever. So it's like I feel like
Naretsu, they have a term for this. It's called a FOMO, or fear of missing out.
Yeah, fear of missing out. Oh my
fantastic.
god.
Yeah.
That's my nephew and my niece.
Yeah, and I didn't realize
FOMO.
this. I didn't realize this until after that whole like controversy with that. Right, I didn't realize that. Wait a minute. Yeah, wait a minute. This why do I care about this? And then since then I've kind of like changed my philosophy on that a bit, right?
Yeah.
And I think that what we need to do is we need to start getting other people to wake up, I guess, into this idea that
Good luck.
Yeah,
because
and that's the problem.
If the resistance, I mean, that's the thing is, I honestly believe that this guy on the one server that we've all talked to, right? This guy, I honestly believe that he's not alone and he's not unique.
No.
I have a sneaky suspicion there are a lot of young guys like this dude.
Yeah.
And they're lazy. They want more people to, to get into anime so they don't get punched in the face anymore. And, they want more people to like anime, so more of it gets licensed, and more of it's brought over, and more of it gets instantaneously translated. And it's all about convenience, and it's all about the drip feed. And it's all about consumption. Consume. And that to me, man, and this whole seasonal model and everything like that, right? That to me is part of the problem, is the consumption model.
Yeah.
It is the consumption model. It is insidious, and it is a corporation's wet dream. You are...
20-year-old consumer memes are real.
Oh, no, they are.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I mean, it's always been that way, right? You get somebody to identify with a product or something like that.
Fuck, it's the...
And, I mean, look at Nike.
Console
Look,
wars.
how many people...
It's a console.
How many... Oh, console wars, yeah. From sportswear to console wars... How many people identify with the product that they consume, right? And
Nope.
I love it. The
Pepsi
phone's
and
ringing. We're gonna have to just live with the phone ringing while my brother's gonna pick it up. But I hope it's not one of my students.
Oh no.
Anyway,
no.
but he's like,
Pepsi and Coke is another good example of that too, right? Like they didn't portray drinking Pepsi or drinking Coke as just something you do because you're thirsty. It's a lifestyle thing. Coke is
oh god,
reminiscent of Americana.
Have you seen
Pepsi is
all
hip.
your friends?
have you seen beer commercials from the 90s?
Yeah.
Dude, go watch beer commercials from the 90s, dude.
Yeah,
They're amazing.
All your friends are doing it.
I remember them.
But like, yeah, it's hilarious. I mean, I'm not a big soda drinker, but I do prefer Coke to Pepsi. But that's just for me a matter of taste, not identity.
Yeah, and for me,
Right? It's not a matter of...
And for me, it's a matter of what one's cheaper at the supermarket that time.
There you go. But it's like but like then you get these people like and they just consume this almost religiously.
Yeah,
right?
they do. Yeah.
And that's the problem. So you got these people who want this easy access to it. And to me, what happens then is that they don't really appreciate it. They don't think about it. It goes through them. It passes through them.
Yeah.
Right. And like, that's it. It's in and out.
Yeah.
When they're done watching the show, they'll forget
And I
about
think-
it in 3 weeks when they've
and I
watched the
think
next one.
watching things at your own pace and choosing what to watch, like the way that I've been doing it, I feel is a lot more healthy. Because I've changed.
You're going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
You're going to enjoy it a lot more.
The example I use is Overlord. Because I slept on Overlord for a while. Like, maybe even like a year or two. I didn't watch the first season, I didn't watch the second season, the third season came out. It wasn't until like I had people like recommending it and just saying, oh no, it's actually really good, it's really, really cool, whatever, that I just decided, alright, I've got like a day where I'm not doing anything, I'll just sit down and binge watch the whole lot. And I fucking loved it. It was a great experience.
Yeah.
It was a great experience
tell you,
to just sit down and watch it and binge watch it. And I think that there's merit to that. There's merit to to that style of doing it. And there's also merit to the style of, okay, I'll just watch it when I have time to watch it, instead of I have to sit down and watch it because this bloody week.
Yeah. It's rare for me to...
Naretsu.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Follow me on this.
Yeah.
kind of off topic. We've been off
Who
topic
gives
a
a
lot. but
who
follow
gives
me
a
on this,
fuck
right?
about the topic at this
So,
point?
because the Heineken plague, as we know, is sweeping through the world, and a lot of people are having to drink Heineken at home, right? So think about the idea of consumerism, right? Or like mass consumerism, you know, I have to consume. And think what happens when people consume too much in a very constricted amount of time.
Oh, it's not
I
good
think
for
we're
you.
I think we're gonna see some interesting changes in the media landscape, like after the Budweiser bubonic plague is finished.
But
You know, its first or second initial wave, because you're suddenly gonna have people that are kind of gonna be sick of things, like sick of media.
well, let's move on a little bit, because I mean we talked about what some of the problems are, right? And we're all aware. We're all well aware.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we're all well aware, right, of what's going on in the industry, right? And you know, and we could provide plenty of examples, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, and this is nothing new. I mean, like I said, that 2018 article, that 2018 article that I brought up, actually has what's his name, Stu Levy, of Tokyo Pop. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, he's talking about that the Japanese anime needs a different attitude towards women. It needs to respect women if it's going to be accepted to a broader audience in the West.
Fuck.
And this was in 2018.
Yeah.
Right? This is not nothing. And then Kun Gao from Crunchyroll sounds off in support of this. And he says he had been saying that for a long time, and he even brings up one show that was banned in Germany, I think in 2017, because it was, I don't know, too sexual or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
But the you know, and he's like, but at the same time, out of the other corner of their mouth, out of the other corner of his mouth, he's like, well, American audiences love Japanese anime because it's different than what we get. It's like, yes.
Yeah.
So you're going to make it like what we already have?
Yeah,
but that's the thing.
It's different, but let's just fucking change it to be more conformative. Yeah, that's a great idea.
So, but here's the problem. Like right now, right? So we've got all this resistance, right? What do we do about it? What do we do?
I'm gonna get to that. But I also want to bring up that is the exact argument of that one guy we did the video on, the gaming video of the guy who was like, because I think it was me, Lolly, and Ellie for that one as well. The guy who was like, oh, there's this fan service in games, and I mean, like, I do like it, but you know, we should change it to help more people come into the niche Japanese game market. And I'm like, no, motherfucker! Like, I was screaming. I was like, no, you fucker. That's not what you do.
No.
And I think the point that I made in that video was, you have to find the people who are into that stuff and are willing to accept that stuff. You don't bring in everyone. You shouldn't be trying to bring in everyone. You should be trying to be unique and bring in the people that like that stuff. You see, it's very like the gaming stuff. Like Neptunia is the best example of that, because the Neptunia franchise literally started as this one game that was pretty fucking shit. like objectively pretty terrible, but it had this unique charm to it, and it slowly grew like a cult following. And from that cult following, they released the second game, and the second game did a little bit better, and it was a little bit more polished, and it was a little bit, you know, more well-known and recognized, and more people just started coming in, and it was organic, right? It wasn't forced. They didn't change what Neptunia was, right? The whole time, even though they'd changed, like, okay, the different gameplay styles, they've changed the mechanics of the game, the core quirkiness of what makes Neptunia has stayed throughout the entirety of the franchise.
Do you want to know? Do you want to know why Neptunia was so successful?
Why was it so successful?
Because it had very, very clear otaku countercultural values attached to it that came across, and it drew in
a shitload of those people, and now it's a multi-billion-dollar whatever franchise, you know. It's massive.
Exactly.
Cole, are you trying to tell me that you don't believe that the otaku man is bad?
Otaku man.
But
Bad.
so
I'm not the only one who I'm not the only one who notices. Right? There seems to be this weird, just like outright evisceration of anything that might be construed as otaku pandering.
Oh,
you
well-
know, pandering to the people who made the industry what
Well,
it is.
funnily enough,
well, there's pandering. There's pandering. And you gotta make a distinction. There's pandering, and then there's stuff that is reflective of the value system.
Yeah. There's
Right?
also
I've seen a lot of shit that is just basically like, otaku are the best people in the world, and it's like, oh, okay, this is retarded.
yeah.
But then I've seen stuff that actually like tries to engage with, what does it mean to be an otaku? What are the values of being an otaku? How does an otaku navigate the real world? Like asking like real legitimate questions and engaging with the value system in a constructive manner. And like something like Hyperdimension Neptunia obviously reflects that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so successful.
so and also Lolly, you're
One that people shit on a lot.
yeah.
One series that people shit on a lot that does that fairly well was Orino Yamoto. Like a lot of people kind of shit on it for being pandering or whatever, but like when I actually watched it, it didn't seem terribly pandering, and it seemed to be very like you said, engaging. Her hobby was,
So to cap this before we get into solutions, otaku. just like the gamers. Like that. It's that same kind of attitude that I see with those gamer people, where it's just like,
no, let's not dip our feet into that water.
Yeah.
But
So let's
keep
move
going,
on.
because we were talking about solutions, right? We were talking about like, okay, so how do we solve this? I think that I'm gonna kind of repeat the same thing that I said in the piracy cast. The solution to the problem is multiple pronged, right? The first prong is you have to get the new people. You have to educate the new people coming in immediately before they can get indoctrinated. That's the first thing. You have to beat the indoctrinators.
That's going to be really, really hard. Because how are you going to
well,
reach
of course
them?
it's going to be really, really hard. That's the thing, right? It's going to be work, right? It's going to have to be an actual concerted effort among people to actually start fighting back about this shit instead of just bitching about it on Twitter, right? So the first prong of that is going to be you have to get the new people coming in, and you have to educate them and go, look, there are these people that are bullshit artists that are going to try and fucking bullshit you, and they're going to try and get you to buy a Crunchyroll subscription. Don't fucking buy a Crunchyroll subscription. Here's how to use BitTorrent, right? You have to get these people coming in, because if you don't get the flow of new people coming in, then regardless of what you try to do otherwise, right, with boycotts or whatever, it's not going to be effective, because the new people will just replace you, right? So you have to, you have to get, like, every plan will have to hinge on these new people, right?
That, and you're in a lot of ways, I don't disagree. The question is how to get your hands on them, how to get into contact with them, without,
and that's
and
the $1 million question.
Obvious,
yeah.
Well, 20 years ago, I would have said just everybody go onto the forums. Well, what forums are there? I mean, Mal is one of the biggest places, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, go onto Mal. That place is a cesspool.
Yeah, it's already.
And you will realize very, very quickly that the kind of people that post on the forums in Mal are a lot more like Mr. Lazy.
Yeah.
Than they are anything else. I mean, you're talking like this is a... Man, if that's what if Mal forums represent the Otaku Brain Trust, we're in deep trouble. And then you also get people who have command of such a broad audience, like the Anime Man, and stuff like that. Like dude, I'll be dead honest. I would rather new people listen to Digibro.
I actually agree,
because at least Digibro, for all of the criticisms you can levy at Digibro. And especially when it comes to like his personal life and being a dick and monkey and all that stupid shit, right? All that dumbass drama that doesn't really matter. Despite all of that stuff, Digibro actually gives a damn about anime. He really does. He might not always be the most informed person, and he might be wrong, but on one or two things. But
he's,
Digibro gives a damn.
He's clearly,
he gives a damn.
Clearly passionate about it.
He's passionate about it, and he doesn't want to see it go down the toilet, right? And so like this, I mean, and hell, dude, he did the work to go through every single OVA and movie made in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And I think the early 90s, and they came out and said the 1980s was like one of the greatest periods for Japanese anime.
Yeah, he does the
and
work. Yeah.
I'm like, I know a lot of people will disagree with him on that. I don't know if I agree with him on that, but it sure is something that is nice. I think is nice to hear, because that was also one of the periods where otaku culture was at it was relatively new, and it was hyper dynamic. But I mean, that's beside the point. I mean, Digibro sees that. He points that out. He was willing to do the work, right? How many other people are willing to do that work? The man has seen OVAs I didn't even know existed, right? So, like, you know, I'd rather them go to him. How do we funnel people away from the anime man and funnel them to people that are going to inform them, right? That's the problem.
Yeah, it's...
How do we get to hold of these new people? How do we sift the wheat from the chaff?
It's annoying because I don't have... Like, I've identified the problem, and I've identified, like, the way that you have to solve the problem, but the actual action that needs to happen is the problem. And I feel like we almost are going to need, like, a Gamergate-style event. We're going to need something to happen that is so drastic that's not like a death by 1,000 cuts. Because Funimation getting on the production, that's a cut, in my opinion. That's a cut. One of the millions of cuts that we've endured over the last few years, right? Crunchyroll's rise to power is a cut. You know, like, they're all cuts. We need a stab wound. We need something. Something has to happen that wakes people up. And in gaming, it was Gamergate. Because regardless of, like, the relevancy of Gamergate now, and, you know, the actual, like, impact that Gamergate has had on the industry over time, the event that was Gamergate in terms of its impact on the actual gaming community and how it divided us and how it woke a lot of people up to, like, it woke me up, right? I didn't know anything.
It woke an entire generation.
Yeah, I didn't have any idea what was going on about this. I was anti-censorship and I didn't like it, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the full scope of the problem until
the funny thing about Gamergate.
Yeah, until hang on.
I did.
Yeah, well, hang on, let me finish. Well, I mean, I was young. Remember, Gamergate happened when I was still in, like, high school, right? Or, like, early high. Well, maybe not early high school, but it was like maybe mid-high school. Like, I can't remember exactly. Again, it was so long ago, right? But at the time, I wasn't as invested in this whole culture war / you know, defending my fandom, defending what I like, you know, defending the attacks and the puritanism of the left and that kind of stuff. I didn't really know about the scope of the problem until an event like Gamergate happened, where I was like, holy shit, this is bad. This is a fucking problem. We need to fucking do, you know? So I think that if we're going to get these normies and get these people that are like the lazy fucks and the lazy fucks and the new people and even the outside people that we could be drawing in to the inner circle, right? We need to have some kind of event that happens, and the problem is that event is not going to be something that can be manufactured. It's going to have to be something natural. But
yeah, and
we're not.
and
but
the
we're,
way
It's something that at this rate is going to happen now.
no, because they're taking it slow.
yeah, that's what I was
And
about
that's
to
the
say.
problem.
That's what I was about to say. It's not going to happen at the moment because Crunchyroll and Funimation and all these companies are taking it slow and death by 1,000 cutting us by slowly infiltrating and slow. Like, they're not. Like, Gamergate happened purely on accident, purely as like a chance event that just sort of happened because a series of puzzle pieces fit together in a very specific way, and the reaction of the gaming journalists was a very specific reaction that triggered people in such a way to cause that to happen and blow up the way it did, right? It was a very specific turn of events. And I don't think that we are in a current position where such a turn of events is going to happen for us. Like, we need... Like, honestly, I was hoping that the interspecies reviewers debacle with Funimation was going to be something that could form... Like, it's events like that, right? Major events that get people talking and everyone starts to, like, wake up and realize, well, wait a minute, there's problems here. Those are what needs to happen.
What happened with Gamergate, right, was really, it wasn't even... what really triggered Gamergate was the publications turning on gamers and saying gamers are dead.
Yeah.
Gamers are bad. And blanket insulting everyone, right? And the SJWs who had infiltrated the gaming communities and gaming magazines and stuff, suddenly turning on them. That was the trigger. I don't think you're going to find... You'll have one or two that will go around saying things like anime fans are disgusting perverts and misogynists and blanket everybody, but not an entire industry.
Yeah.
The way the gaming journalism industry did, that triggered Gamergate, right? The other thing, though, that we should pay attention to, right? Even if we do organize and start going out and debating these people, we have to be extremely careful not to make the mistakes that Gamergate made.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because even though it was a minority, there were people that did... I mean, it's inevitable that there were people that went out and harassed people like Zoe Quinn and Anita Sarkeesian. Hey, granted, looking back on the time, it wasn't so far removed from the aughts that I felt like, oh, well, that's just the internet, man. People get death threats. What the hell? But they use
that. They use that.
Oh,
as,
man.
As
I mean, again, go look at the definition of Gamergate on Wikipedia.
Yeah,
it basically calls it a harassment campaign.
It's how they managed to twist the narrative, right? Because they twisted the narrative. So you are correct in that was a major problem with Gamergate. Was
the other problem is they painted because of these harassers, they appeared to have the credibility to paint those who debated them and debated their ideas in the public forum of harassment. And that's the thing.
Suddenly disagreement becomes harassment.
Exactly, and that's the thing. We, if we're going to have people that go out there and debate these people, right? Because that's one of the things you have to, if you're going to win over the hearts and minds of these new people, right? And assuming these new people even give a shit, I think... I hate to tell you this, I honestly think Gen Z is incredibly apathetic.
Yeah.
All the Gen Zers I know, and there's not many, but I'm related to a bunch of them. Granted, maybe it's a South Jersey thing, but all the Gen Zers I know are really freaking apathetic. You can't introduce them to shit. They don't care. If they didn't find it themselves or one of their friends found it, they don't give a shit. So they all seem to have a lot more in common with that. Me and Loli's fencing partner in the Battle of Wits
That's not terrible. Like, as somebody who is closer to Gen Z, born in '92 here, younger millennial, so a lot of the people I tend to talk to tend to be like older Gen Z or something like that. I'd hate to say it, and I feel kind of bad for them in a way. We talk about the 20-year-old consumer memes, right? They fell for consumerism hard.
Yeah, they did.
Like, that defines their identity.
Yeah. Oh no, they are, and this is the thing, right? I don't know if you guys are familiar with Nietzsche, and maybe we should get Mr. Cynical in here.
Yeah.
But one of the things Nietzsche predicted was this thing called the last man. And back in the 90s, right, there was this book on the changing world and the growth of globalism. And that's the other thing, like, everybody's talking about globalism, and so don't worry, this will kind of circle back. Guy named Francis Fukuyama published a book called The End of History and the Last Man. And the Nietzschean last man is this completely milquetoast individual, the opposite of the Ubermensch, right? He's this completely milquetoast individual that Nietzsche saw as the future of Western civilization. He avoids conflict. He's a creature of habit. He goes to work, comes home, consumes product, goes to bed, has no real meaning in his life. You know, he's generally just agreeable because he stands for nothing. You know, he's basically he is the beta guy that, you know, everybody's talking about. Like, Nietzsche predicted this guy over 120, 140 years ago.
He
You
said
know?
of himself that he would be born posthumously.
Yeah. And so, like, you know, what we're looking, and Francis Fukuyama, then, in The End of History and The Last Man, basically, and this book was, by the way, like I said, written in the nascent, heady days when globalism seemed like a good thing back in the 90s, right? And everybody was talking about how this was the way of the future, and how the internet was the golden road that led to it, the yellow brick road that led to the city of globalism, and a high tide lifts all boats kind of rhetoric. And so, like, Francis Fukuyama publishes his book, and then there's that little bitter twinge that, like, in the consumerist world that comes about with globalism, everyone is the last man. Everyone is the last man. And I sit there and I look at Gen Z. And yeah, some people say, like, they're going to be the most conservative generation since World War II. And it's like, in what ways? Because these people, I can see in some, they're more entrepreneurial. My God, these kids love to consume. And I look at my nephew, man, and I look at my niece, and they want to make money. They want to make money. Why do they want to make money? To consume product. And that's the thing. You know, you're battling this desire. This is a generation that has been raised to prefer McDonald's cheeseburgers, figuratively speaking, metaphorically speaking, to filet mignon.
Yeah.
And they have no appreciation. And if it takes work to achieve something,
They're not going to do
right?
it.
And I'm not talking going to work to make money to get it, right? That's different. Going to work to make money is one thing. They're very mercenary about that. But the idea that, oh, we're going to have to network, we're going to have to go online, we're going to have to use BitTorrent,
Yeah.
we're going to have to use,
You're
we're going to have to,
You're going to have to wait a week. You're going to have to,
Yeah.
you know...
they don't want to do that because they seem to, and I could be wrong. We don't know how this generation is going to develop over the next 20 years. I hope I'm wrong, right? They could learn some hard lessons from the crises that we're going through right now at the beginning of the 20s. But on the trajectory that I was seeing, right, they appeared to be a generation that, I hate to say, kind of reminded me of the boomers, that as long as they give it money, it'll fix itself. I mean, that's kind of the boomer mentality. I give this thing money, it fixes itself, right? And that's the, you know, I kind of see that in them, and you know, I give Crunchyroll money, I get anime. Push button, receive bacon,
Yeah.
right? It's like that's how they seem to be approaching this situation. That's how that guy on the server appears. He doesn't want to lift a finger. He's willing to take the SJW bullshit crammed down his throat so that he can watch his Japanese cartoons.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't want to put the effort in.
And
It's like the work, man. And I came in at the tail end of it. I became a part of the anime system at the tail end of it. But even at the tail end, between the years of like 1995 and 2000, right before you had LimeWire and eMule and eDonkey and stuff like that, to download stuff through. My God, the damn phone. Before you had that shit to download stuff through, right? I had to go online, and I had to email people to, you know, and send them like a $7 check per VHS cassette to get 4 episodes of something fan subbed. And that's assuming that it was, you know, not licensed. If it was licensed, if I wanted to dub, it was like $30 US. Nowadays, that would be something ridiculous like $50-some US for a VHS cassette with 2 episodes on it. And people will sit there and they're like, these people would have never gotten into anime under those circumstances.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah, it would be too
Like, they
much-
would have
it
been
be too
priced
much
right
work
out.
for them, yeah.
So, like, the thing is this, the price of admission, the requirement of blood and sweat and work and networking, hooking two VCRs together to dub a tape so that you could, and back then dubbing a tape meant, copying it. Hooking two VCRs together so you could dub a tape for your buddy because that person was going to dub a tape for you, right? Doing this sort of thing, networking like that is too much effort. And it used to, and that's the thing, is the only people who you got in the anime community back then in the 90s were the people who were willing to do that. Gate kept itself.
Yeah. Yeah. The difficulty of access was the gatekeeping.
Yeah. So, like, honestly, like, with this stuff going bad at the source, and that's what Funimation intends to do, is this is going to go bad at the source. We have one chance to bring it down. Otherwise, we better find something else to be a fan of. I mean, it is that stark.
Well,
it is that stark.
Well, obviously, don't buy Crunchyroll products. Don't support Crunchyroll.
Don't support Crunchyroll. Don't support Funimation. If you're going to support your,
tell everyone the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Teach people. I probably shouldn't say this, but whatever. Teach people how to pirate.
No, straight up. I think, and I've been very, I've voiced this before. Not sure on the cast, but I've been very open about my support of piracy. I think piracy is a necessary. I don't even think it's evil at this point. I've kind
it's
of
civil disobedience.
Yeah, I've changed.
I see it as civil
lot
disobedience
from my days of being anti-pirate back in a long time ago when I did used to watch shit for free on Crunchyroll without a sub and have to deal with 180p fucking ads every 5 seconds, right? I feel like piracy is literally the way that you speak in these situations. You speak without speaking, you speak with your actions, right? And I think that the people that are because this is going back to that first cast, right? The people that are anti-pirate who try to morally grandstand about it and go, oh, you're not supporting the creators, they're not getting money. It's like, I think we need to just start getting fucking iron-willed to that shit and just say, yeah, fuck it. The sacrifice. I've said this before, but the sacrifice needs to be made, right? If by pirating, that means that there is less money to the creators, and that means there is less anime being produced and made, then that's the sacrifice that needs to be made. People need to understand that we can't keep this up anymore. We can't.
You know who we need to start communicating with too, and this is the hard part. It's not just the new fans that are coming in. We need to communicate with the Japanese.
Yeah.
We need to get Japanese fans and Japanese otaku active. We need to get them up in arms. We need to get them freaking out over this.
And that's the thing. It's somewhat starting to happen because you're seeing Japanese reacting to shit that's going on in the West. There was that board game comic of the SJW stretching, and someone posted that on Japanese Twitter, right? Because an interesting thing about Japanese Twitter is it's actually very isolated from Western Twitter. It's like a completely different fucking site because of the language barrier. It's like a completely different fucking site, even though it's not actually segregated. It's like if you go, because I follow a lot of Japanese artists, right, and hentai artists and porn artists and music artists and all this stuff, and they all tweet in Japanese, right? So you have to use Google Translate or you have to figure it out, right? But it's all insulated. It's very insulated.
Yeah.
They don't talk about a lot of this SJW type shit all the time. They don't talk about a lot of this culture war stuff. But then when it does show up, stuff with the Unseen Japan fiascos that have been happening recently, when the Japanese do react to it, they are very fucking woke. They are very anti-SJW and very, this is fucking bullshit.
That's because you have to understand too, the otaku over there faced existential threats going all the way back to the 80s.
Yeah. Yes, with the Miyazaki killings,
Yeah, they were getting fucked, right?
Yeah.
So
And so this is this is frankly, let's call it what it is, Western imperialism.
yeah,
It's cultural
yeah,
imperialism.
it is. So I
right?
actually think
This
you're
is a
onto
direct
something.
threat to them in a lot of ways.
I think you're onto something there. I think
We need to get them on board.
I think you're
because
very
honestly,
much, yeah.
dude, and here's the thing: those people that are on these production committees, I guarantee, could give a fuck less about the otaku.
Oh, yeah, they
because the
don't, no.
otaku are too small a demographic to matter, unless the otaku start making a big stink about this shit. And frankly, the otaku are the ones that are providing a lot of the source material for these things.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Where do you
And
think
otaku
where do you think this anime fucking comes from?
Exactly. And so, like, not everybody who creates this stuff are otaku, but a good amount of otaku create this stuff.
And if they're not otaku, they have consumed or at least are inspired by otaku media. Right?
Yeah, otaku
Like,
media and
like,
otaku culture.
You can see the roots, right? The roots run very deep within the medium, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like you are very much onto something here that we need to get the Japanese side, like not just the fans, but like the industry side, but also the author side, right? We need to get we need to get the authors of the real light novels. We need to go, look, this is what these people are doing to your work. Do you think the creator of Dragon Maid was thrilled about the fact that they put that line about patriarchy in the anime? Right? Do you think,
they didn't know about it in English.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't even know about it. That's the problem.
Do you think that if you went up to that author and you told them, hey, look, they changed your work like this. Like, think about it if it was an English-speaking person. Right?
I have two examples of that. I have two examples of that exact thing where the creators found out what was going on. One was Hayao Miyazaki.
Yes.
If you ever go back and look up the old, like, early 1980s,
the famous story,
Warriors of the Wind.
The famous story of him sending a samurai sword to to Disney.
There's that, but there's also the case of Studio Khara, when they sent the first time the episode 3 of the Rebuilds came out with the dubbed version. It was aired, I think, the first time it was shown was at a convention. And Studio Khara was interested in monitoring the audience reactions to the dub. And during the scene when Shinji first meets Kaoru and they talk and they hang out and they start playing the piano and stuff, the English dub originally had a bunch of jokes about gayness or whatever, right? I don't know the context. I don't know if it was a, disparaging joke or an offhand joke or if it was kind of like a pro-gay joke.
Yeah, it could have been anything.
I don't know if it was woke or not, but they put a couple jokes in there, double entendres or whatever. And so the audience is laughing. And the representative of Studio Khara was taking notes. And he's like, why are they laughing at this scene? So then he goes and he asks the people from Sentai Filmworks, I believe it was, who did the dub. And they said, oh, well, we changed the dialogue to be this. And he said, no, you're going to redub this and change it back.
Yeah.
And they had to. And that is the problem.
And that
the Japanese
we need to fucking get that happening more. We
need to get that happening more. Not only that, let me tell you something. I blame the Japanese for a lot of this problems. You might ask why. The Japanese have had 40 to 50 years of sending their shows over here and letting them being licensed instead of taking this into their own hands.
I agree.
Most Japanese...
We need to cut the middleman completely. I think Crunchyroll and Funimation do not need to exist. These studios, well, maybe not the studios, but the production committees and the companies themselves that own the rights to these animes in Japan probably have the money and the capacity to set up their own fucking shit. Like you
incorporate a subsidiary company in the West. That's what you do. You incorporate a subsidiary company in the United States. Yeah. Japanese car companies do this, right? All kinds of Japanese corporations have been doing this since the 70s.
Yeah.
You incorporate and set up a subsidiary company, and you literally sell your product to the subsidiary company.
Yeah.
Which then purchases it and sells it for profit in the U.S. or in New Zealand or Australia or wherever.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is well, what about the problem with all these distribution or all these production committees? They're all different. Well, then you know what? Come up with a handful of everybody who could be on a production committee should buy stock and create a new company that exists solely to license stuff.
Yeah. No,
And
I agree.
distribute it abroad.
No, I agree.
Because
Yeah.
this is the problem. I mean, this is the problem. You think the Koreans deal with this crap?
No. Yeah.
No, man. The Koreans are going like that's the thing is Koreans really. This is the difference between Japan and Korea, right? The leadership in Japan are kind of like taking it easy and sitting on their laurels, whereas for the past 10 or 15 years, the Koreans have realized that they got something with their shows, that they have interest in K dramas, they have interest in K film, and so and stuff,
Korean,
and they're
K-pop, man. K-pop,
and
fucking
they are
massive.
They are pushing their product.
Yeah.
Because the South Koreans realize that this is soft power.
It is.
And it is. It is soft power. Right?
It is.
I mean, dude, my mom watches Korean dramas.
It is going for the cultural victory in Civilization 5.
Parasite won Academy Award.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, I'm amazed
When
that
was
like,
the last time a
Old Boy
Japanese movie won an Academy Award?
Actually, like what, 4 years ago?
4 years ago.
4 or 5 with the show Departures with Ryoko Hirosue.
Oh, that's good to hear. Actually, that's good.
But yeah.
But the point I was trying to make was mostly along the lines of like when was the like in terms of like these media's breaking through, right? You've
something
seen
other than best foreign picture, right?
The Koreans, right? The Koreans are capitalizing on their media more efficiently than the Japanese are.
Exactly. They and the Japanese are they're just happy to sit on their laurels and let somebody else do all the
Japanese,
work. And that's how this happens.
The Japanese are just happy to have the money printer go brr, right? The money printer go brr without them having to do a whole lot. But then the Koreans are like, what if we ramped the money what if we tuned the money printer so it went brr at a more efficient rate so that we got more money over time. That's what the Koreans are doing. They're tweaking the machine and they're going, oh, we could like do this and this and this and that could actually maybe be more efficient. The Japanese are just content with the speed that the printer is printing. Whereas
you know what else? The Koreans are unapologetic about the fact that this stuff is their cultural product.
Yeah,
they are unapologetic about that.
Yeah.
Like it's in everything. Right, and they're I don't see evidence of the Koreans adjusting any of their K-dramas or their movies or any of that stuff for a Western audience.
No, they just...
I don't see any evidence of that.
Again,
they didn't do it when they were talking with the North Koreans. There was a K-pop band there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember what I said on the Parasite podcast. Was Parasite localized or was it translated? It was translated, wasn't it? It wasn't localized. It was translated.
No.
So,
and that's the thing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, I blame I blame the Japanese for it. For 10 years, I've been saying this, that Cool Japan has actually been dead. Granted, the Hallyu, the Korean wave, it subsided, but it still has not gone away entirely. The tide has risen because of the Korean wave. Not as much. But that's the thing, is the Japanese sitting on their butts has allowed these companies to do this. And that's the thing, is like, well, as long as we don't care if the show is successful in the West, as long as it gets licensed, we get our check.
Yeah.
And that's the weakness. That is Crunchyroll and Funimation's big weakness. They have to still cut a check.
Yeah.
And they have to still cut this check and license this. So if we cut them off, it will hurt them, not the creators in Japan. That's what nobody wants to deal with. Nobody wants to deal with that reality. Everybody's going to gaslight you. They're going to lie about that stuff. But the reality is the Japanese creators already done got paid.
Yeah.
They already done got paid. So you boycotting this shit and you pirating it is not going to change anything. And in fact, I hate to tell you this, but we actually want these licensing companies to die.
Yeah.
I at least do. I want the licensing companies to die, because then that could give the opportunity for new blood or new models like Comicsgate has presented a new model.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if he's still on YouTube and makes videos, but Plot Progressor B, I think he made one or two way back in the day. But he had a comparison, right? What if let's assume on the slight chance that anime doesn't go the way Anno warned us about, and we actually succeed in canceling Crunchyroll, Funimation, Sentai Filmworks, and all these other bad actors. Let's assume victory. What do we build in the ashes? Well, Plot Progressor B, I don't know how feasible this would be, but he said, look at what, because I'd love to see grassroots, right? The otaku movement in the first place in Japan was a grassroots movement. The anime movement in the United States, I can't speak for other countries, but at least in the United States, back in the 80s and 90s, a lot of getting your stuff was very grassroots, right? You had to work, you had to work really hard to get your hands on stuff. If you were a fan subber, you had to work really hard to get the laser discs and translate and then make the fan subs in an age before, like, computers were very good to enable you to be able to do that with ease. So, like, there was, but it was a grassroots period, right? I'd like to see that again. And Plot Progressor B suggested something along the lines of, like, how Unix operates. And he said something like, it's all basically done by donations and it's open source. And I was thinking, like, holy shit. Open source licensing for anime fueled by donations. We basically donate money and it's open source fan subbing, open source translating, hell, open source dubbing. You think you couldn't be able to get people like, I don't know, Melody or Noble from Lost Paws or Nux Taku or, I don't know, Unknown Otaku or some of these other people to do pro bono fan dub work? Right? I'm sure you could get a whole bunch of people to donate their time to do pro bono dub work, and I don't think you'd have a hard time finding a lot of people who would be willing, especially since it's so easy to put subtitles in nowadays compared to how it was 30 years ago. I don't think you'd have a hard time finding people who would pro bono sub either. And that is assuming that the Japanese Blu-rays and DVDs already don't have English subtitles on them. One of the things I noticed in South Korea this is 10 years ago, a lot of the movies already had English subtitles on them.
Yeah, quite a few Blu-rays for Japanese releases used to have at least English subtitles on them. First Nanoha movie for one.
Really? Yeah. I mean, if you already have the infrastructure in place to do this, Japan, why don't you just ship this shit? And to go back to DL Site, man, DL Site. I know I brought DL Site up when we were talking about pirating games and stuff. Man,
their system is fucking great.
Yeah,
it is. They need to advertise.
The way that they fucking got past.
They've more or less.
If DL Site, oh my god, imagine DL Site hosting streaming for anime across borders. No more licensing.
Yeah, just buy the show from DL Site.
Well, not even buy the show. Like buy a $10 a month, $20 a month. Even if it's across borders and you have to pay like a fee because it's across borders, maybe it'll add up to like $20 or $25 a month. I would pay $25 a month to be able to access any anime subtitled to a Japanese company. I would do that in a heartbeat. DL Site. The infrastructure is already there. DL Site already translates stuff into English for foreign buyers. What the heck? We don't need Crunchyroll.
Yeah.
We don't. It's just going to be painful to get rid of them, and that's the thing, though.
It's like I said, sacrifices need to be made.
Yes, you, the anime fan, you, the person listening to this podcast, you need to be willing to tighten your belt and do without.
Yep.
For a while. You need to be willing to tighten your belt, go get shit fan subs for a while.
Yeah.
You need to order this stuff from Japan. You need to get it in. You need to go and do the work, because if you don't, then then go home. Go watch Doctor Who. Go watch woke Doctor Who. Go watch Steven Universe. Go watch something else, right?
Yeah,
Because
I mean, you're just at that point, you might as well just start watching that and get used to it, because that is going to be the future.
exactly,
of that stuff.
that's the future. If you don't want to watch Steven Universe, if you don't want to watch Ed, and Eddie, or whatever the hell came out on Cartoon Network, if you want to watch anime, well, don't get used to it, because their agenda is to turn this shit into Steven Universe and the hell is that show that's coming out on High Guardian Spice?
Yeah.
That's what their aim is.
Yeah.
Right? That is
High
their
Guardian
aim.
Spice actually does illustrate that too, because that's taking, mind you, one of their claims for High Guardian Spice, Crunchyroll, is that there are animators over in Japan working on it. But I know for a fact, and somebody it wasn't Taro Yamada, it was somebody else, was talking about this when the KyoAni fire happened. He was saying, just describing how devastating of it losses was, and he said that he would estimate that there are only like 5,000 or so employees in the anime production side of things, right? So something like High Guardian Spice, it may not seem like a big deal, but the freelancers they are taking to have that specific project come up is taken from the
Yes, it is.
production of something else. It is, it is cultural imperialism. That is
Yes.
something you see with that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a problem. That's a problem. And I mean, what do I do? Don't just like this crap on Twitter. When somebody like that guy that the researcher who researches Japanese DPRK relations, who tweeted out about this stuff being cultural imperialism.
Yeah.
What was that? Was like 2 or 3 days ago. Well, by the time you guys hear this, it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Probably.
But that was 2 or 3 days ago, and that guy, like, don't just like and retweet his tweet. Go and cancel your friggin' subscriptions.
Yeah.
And I hate to say this, guys. I hate to say, I'm going to come straight out though and say it. Because me and Bio Gundam are going to be doing a video on Vision of Escaflowne, and like next week we're going to record something on Vision of Escaflowne. I dug up a couple of Blu-ray DVDs that I had bought because I don't have a VCR anymore, and these are my Vision of Escaflowne Blu-ray DVDs, and I watched them, and within an episode or two, I realized this is not the correct translation. This is a localization. And I actually went and dug up the old VHS fan subs. What the hell happened? My screen just went blank. I went and dug up my old VHS fan subs of Vision of Escaflowne, right? And I don't have a VCR to watch them on, but I would rather watch, and if you look at VHS quality, especially something that's been like copied 2 or 3 times, and compare it to Blu-ray, dude, it looks real bad. However, I'll be honest, I would have rather watched those VHS cassettes and get a more accurate fan sub translation than sit there and watch the Funimation Blu-ray Funimation Blu-ray sub that I was watching. That was a localization.
Yeah, and you bringing that up is actually a pretty interesting thing, because those Escaflowne Blu-rays, those were who were they published by?
That's Funimation. I got them before I knew Funimation was such a bad actor.
Yeah. So a lot of people, I think, a lot of older anime fans who only watch retro stuff, they think this doesn't affect them, right?
Yeah.
Because they think, oh, well, this is only ever going to affect new anime. I can only watch my old stuff.
No, it does. It affects guys like me too.
If they're re-releasing those things, and they're willing to change dialogue to be, safer from shows that are like decades old, if a tree falls in the forest, doesn't make noise. The same thing here, if they just remove 1 or 2 scenes, you could just go down a way of, you're not remembering it.
I was watching High Score Girl the other night, and it was episode 16, And there's a scene, and I actually went back to the manga and confirmed, because I was like, I don't remember this. There's a scene in the manga where one of the guys gets shaken down for his pants and his money and his sneakers, right? They're in Shibuya, and one of the main character's friends gets shaken down. He gets mugged. And they make the mugger, I think the muggers were a bunch of Gyarus, but it was played as, in the comic, as just like, well, this is Shibuya. The adaptation that just came out on Netflix for season 2, episode, I think it was 16 or 17. So they go meet the main character in Shibuya. The guy gets mugged. And then it turns into a big deal of confronting the Gyarus in the alleyway. And the Gyarus end up beating up all the boys. And then, like, some old former teacher comes out to try to fight the girls, and he gets his ass beat. And it's the female teacher that beats the Gyarus. And it's like, and she does it so fast that they don't even see her arms move. And it's like, and I'm like, this is, I don't remember this from the comic. I went back and looked. Yeah, that shit was completely added. That was not in the manga at all. And I'm like, why did they add this? Oh. Girl power. That's why.
You think it's a ideological thing?
It's you know what? I don't know what to think, because I used to think Netflix was, Netflix used to have the model of, we're going to throw money at the creators and not, and just let them do whatever the hell they want, and let creators be creative. And I don't know. I don't know why this was added. I don't know whose idea it was. I'd like to give Netflix the benefit of the doubt, but you know what, man? I don't know. I don't remember hearing Netflix actually come out and say anything like anime needs to be for a wider audience. They may have said something like that at some point. And if they have, I wouldn't be surprised if they nudged or pushed for shit like that to be added. But I don't know. Now, if this was, like, say, on Crunchyroll, I'd have been like, oh, hell yes. Crunchyroll added this entire scene. Or it was a Funimation thing, I'd have said, oh, hell yes. Funimation added this entire scene. But even then, it was not... I'm pissed still. Whether or not,
is the artist for I mean, he may not even be able to say anything, but is the artist for High Score Girl is he on Twitter or something, or like,
I don't know.
Because reasonably you could ask if that was a scene that, maybe he approved of, or something that he thought was okay to add, or whether or not he was, consulted on it.
I don't know. That's a good question too, because how much rights do the original creators have on some of this shit?
Yeah.
I mean, that is mad up for grabs too, dude.
I mean, not related necessarily to ideological stuff, but I do know that there were several instances in which the original creators for like some novels or some manga have had problems with live action adaptations.
Yeah.
Like changing things or adding or kind of putting words in their mouth. There was one I remember reading a few years back. I forget whether it was a manga or a novel, but it was about a teacher who helps who teaches like a special ed class or whatever, right? And there was a episode that was original to the live action adaptation, on a child who had a high functioning autism, and they completely misrepresented the illness. Like the author actually based this off of he worked with kids and in those systems, and he was vehemently like offended by what they put on the live action thing. They more or less implied that all kids with Asperger's are low-key sociopaths. More or less.
Oof.
So like it's not unprecedented for studios or like to kind of just like not consult the original creator or something. So it would be interesting to know whether or not he was consulted on this scene, and whether or not
there's also the question of how much control the original creators have. I mean, from what I understand, when you start submitting something to Shonen Jump, you really lose a lot of your rights to ownership of your creation. Yeah. And Shonen Jump will be more interested and have more say, most likely, in the adaptation than you do. And so that's the thing.
Yeah.
It depends. I imagine it depends from magazine to magazine. publication to publication company, or how much rights the original creator managed to retain from the get-go, right? But nevertheless, like, that's the thing is we have to assume that the original creators are pretty much as I guess screwed when it comes to their material as an original creator is with regards to Hollywood a lot of the time. Like, Hollywood really, really has to want to adapt your property for them to make a deal with you while you're still alive. Let's put it that way, right? Most of the time they wait till your ass is dead so they can fuck it up as bad as they want. And, but like, so like I said, just kind of keep that in mind, right? Because I imagine, like, that's kind of how the Japanese adaptation system is. Nevertheless, like, if I've seen this shit and I've noticed this shit in shows, right? And I'm not, like, I don't really watch seasonal anime. High Score Girl is the first show that I've really watched while it was coming out in a very long time. Because, while personally, it's a lot of member berries for me. But even then, I saw that change, and I'm like, I am so soured. That could have been completely innocent. It could have been put there for completely innocent reasons. But the well is so poisoned by now that my first response, and I still feel, mostly, that this was some, infestation shit. Right? This was a product of those fifth columnists sneaking something in. It could have been just there to show that Shibuya girls are dangerous and worldly. Or it could have been there as a girl power thing. And honestly, considering all the little bits and snatches and hints of the scene, I'm leaning towards this was some girl power shit that was shoehorned in. So what do we do about it? I keep going back to say, cancel your subscriptions.
Yep.
Cancel all your subscriptions.
Cancel
Stop
your
buying
subscriptions.
shit.
Stop buying shit from them. Don't.
Yeah.
Buy shit directly from Japan.
Yes.
Start cutting out the middleman.
And we honestly, I think we might want to start doing things like writing to the Japanese. Start your own streaming services, right? Yeah. Start your because of the nature of the internet. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? Put up a wall, the Great Wall of America, or the Great Wall of New Zealand, or the Great Wall of Canada, or whatever? Yeah. The way Chinese have a firewall? Are we going to do that? Hopefully not in the next 20 years, but, like, let's be honest. You can't, to quote the movie Serenity, you can't stop the signal, Mal. Like, it's the internet.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like, we need to go to the Japanese. We need to start communicating with them. We need to start tweeting these Japanese production companies, these Japanese creators, the Japanese magazines, and start telling them, we want to give you our money, get rid of the middleman. Like, and that's the thing, man. Dude, I don't give a shit if we start mobbing these people. If tomorrow every single one of us took to Twitter, and I know we're not going to do this, but let's just imagine if tomorrow every single one of us took to Twitter and wrote a few lines, ran it through Google Translate, copied, pasted onto your Twitter, and tweeted these Japanese companies. They would be inundated with these tweets saying, don't do this. And they'd have to sit up and take notice. Why are all these foreigners tweeting us? Why are they all tweeting us? Why are all these gaijin tweeting us, don't make a deal with Crunchyroll? Don't make any deals with Funimation. Why are they tweeting us? And the simpler the sentence you could make, the better. But if we could all go out tomorrow and do this, and to do this, I don't know, once a day. Wake up in the morning, take a piss, sit down on your computer, type out 2 sentences about not going in, not making a deal with Crunchyroll, and tweet it out to all these Japanese, put it through Google Translate and tweet it out to all these Japanese companies and shit. If we all did this, they'd sit up and take notice. They would probably go to Funimation, Crunchyroll, and say, why are they saying this?
Yeah.
Why are they saying this?
What the hell's going on here, guys?
Yeah. What is going on? Why are they telling us they want to boycott you? Right? Why are they telling us not to make deals with you? You're bad actors.
That's actually one of the benefits of, I guess, the Japanese just living so damn long, because a lot of the people who are, like, still at the heads of these companies are, like, have been around since, like, the 80s, sometimes the 70s. So, like, their sense of business is basically molded by the Japanese economic miracle. So
Yeah.
And
they're on point with that shit. They're not going to fuck
Yes
around.
and no. Yes and no, because they are also extremely ossified. And one of the things you see in Japan and in South Korea is the whole they have the whole shit rolls downhill culture, where your elders haze the seniors haze the juniors, right? And the juniors hate it while they're being hazed, but once they become seniors themselves, do you think they change? No. They start hazing too, and it's like the revolutionary minds in the video game industry of the late 70s and early 80s in the Japanese video game industry. They're now the old fuddy-duddies that have ossified and grown old and are, the old Japanese men sitting in the chair in the high office somewhere, dictating to the old ways to a world that no matter what you're going to become your parents. It's sad fact of life. Right? It is a sad fact of life. But like, I wouldn't entirely put as much trust in the heads of companies as you guys might. That's the thing. I wouldn't put as much trust in these old heads, especially if they date back to the economic miracle, because a lot of them might be viewing things from the view of the 80s and still have these built-in assumptions that the world works a certain way when it doesn't anymore. That's my only warning about that one. But yeah, it would, like, we have to make them sit up and take notice somehow. And I mean, like I said, we got to get organized. We have to get organized. That's the other thing. We have to get organized, and we can't do it on my anime list. We can't do it. We will get banned for trying to organize on these places because the SJWs have infiltrated all these forums. We have to find another place to go. We have to find another way to organize. I mean, Discord's a great way.
Yep.
But that's the thing. Is, again, we have to be able to network. We have to network. We have to organize. And we need leaders. That's the other. Comicsgate has leaders.
Yeah, we need influencers, basically, like Digibro and big names with big sub counts that
the problem with the big names with big sub count. I hate to say it, but I mean, I think one of the best leaders, even though he's crazy, for this sort of rebellion, might be Libido Cayman. But I love the guy. He's a nut. He's pretty nuts.
Yeah, those videos were great. I love watching those.
Well, that's like I've actually, like, he's way more chill than he comes off in his videos. But like the problem with Digibro, I think, is Digibro doesn't give a shit. Yeah. I would say honestly, right off the bat, I don't think Digibro would give a shit.
Enough of a shit. Yeah.
I mean,
all right,
Digibro's support would be good, but I don't know. That's the thing, is like, who?
Well, he has already been very critical of Crunchyroll and such.
Yes.
Things.
Oh, that's.
So I think he is solidly # our guy.
Yeah.
I feel like,
yeah, but I don't think he's the kind of person that would lead the movement.
Yeah.
If you follow what I mean.
I get what you mean. Like, he'd be a supporter, but not a leader.
Yeah, he'd be like, we would need. I mean, we could definitely use him adding his voice to this.
Yeah.
But as a leader of a kind of a sort of Weeb Wars revolution,
all right.
I don't think he'd want to.
Weeb Wars. I love the name Weeb Wars. That should be what we use. But anyway, I think we've gone on quite a while, and I think it's been a very productive talk.
Yeah. It's a shame that
it's been kind of like a. It's weird because these types of things aren't really like the norm for whenever we like sit down and do something like this. Like,
we just kind of.
This has probably been the most political episode I think we've.
Well, like I said, I don't want to get political, but by Allah, I'm gonna beat you with my sheep.
Ugh.
It's inevitable with things like this because it's unfortunately just tied to the situation.
It's such a politically charged topic, and a lot of it is to do with politics, and it's a
things in life are these
yeah.
days.
But anyway, I
unfortunately.
think it's time to wind it down and cut it off, and say just the closing statement is just don't support the parasites. Don't.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a shame Easy to Act wasn't, or what's your friend's name again? Nate?
Nat
Yeah,
wasn't
Nat.
available.
Nat.
Because he would have, Nathan. Nat,
I think they could have really provided an interesting perspective because there's something of an insider, and just like they
Somewhat.
provided in a perspective on the piracy vid, I think they could have provided an
Oh, well,
interesting.
maybe we can do like, I don't know, Volume 2, Electric Boogaloo.
It's just going to be an ongoing series, and Ellie's going to hate us.
Ongoing series.
I intend to hammer the drums of rebellion, dude. I really do.
He's
I
just been
intend to hammer.
sitting here playing Stellaris the whole fucking time, not
Yeah.
saying a word.
It's just going to be the same game.
I mean, but I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop hammering the drums of rebellion. I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
I should be the leader, but man, damn it, I have to do something, right? I've already unsubscribed and I don't buy.
Yeah.
Sitting, just doing that and sitting on my ass is not enough. I have to do something to try to convince people, right? I have to do something to try to spread the word, because anime, goddamn it, anime is one of the last things. I can always go back to the past. I can always, like role playing games. I always have the old books to go back to, that weren't woke. I always have the old novels. Science fiction novels to go back to. I always have the old Star Wars and Star Trek movies to watch.
Yeah.
I'm an American, so I always have Tom Baker's Doctor Who. I can always go back to the Doctor. Fourth Doctor was the Doctor for us. So I can always go back to Tom Baker. But, it would still be nice to see these things continue. And it would still be nice to see anime continue and not get destroyed like these people have destroyed every other
Everything else.
thing
Yeah.
out there. And I have to do something.
Alright. And with that, I think we're going to end. So this has been a fun episode of Taking the Stand. And we will catch you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.